The government is trying to pass the Inflation Reduction Act. You hear it as something that could possibly battle inflation. Now, what if I told you that's actually a lie? Stay tuned, we'll break it down, and I'll tell you why. The more details you hear, the less it's about inflation. So the Dems proposed the Inflation Reduction Act as a way to reduce inflation over time. And a lot of us go, oh my gosh, inflation's at 9.1%. The economy seems to be in this weird recessionary situation. Are we in a recession? Are we not? I don't know, but everybody's talking about it. So this has got to be a good thing for us, right? This has got to be a good thing for all of us, the consumers. Well, I'll tell you, that's actually not true. We got played for fools. And I tend to believe that the reason why the government has not acknowledged a recession was because they wanted so badly to pass this particular act as an attempt to battle inflation. And because we're so worried about a recessionary economy actually happening, we're more likely to vote in favor of something like this, or at least our representatives are. So what happens? The Dems fast track this. They only need 50 votes to get it done. And guess what? It's 50-50 tied, and in walks the Vice President of the United States, and she votes as the final tiebreaker to make this happen. Now, this historic bill spends a whole lot of money. And spoiler alert, inflation is caused by one thing and one thing only. There's a lot of opinions on this, there's a lot of thoughts, but here's the way it works. Inflation is caused by the government printing money. We printed a ton of money during the pandemic. We've been printing money for a long period of time before that, and there's 14 years of economic prosperity. And in this printing of money, we've caused this outrageous inflation, 9.1%. Some believe core inflation is closer to even 20%, depending on what your beliefs are. That being said, we've now printed even more money, but is this going to reduce inflation over time? Well, the experts say no. As a matter of fact, Wharton, which is arguably, if not the known to be #1 business school in the country in Pennsylvania, has talked about the implications of breaking this bill down and saying, hey, will this actually impact inflation? Well, here's what it's actually thought to do, is that in the short term, in the narrow term, the next year or two, it's actually going to increase inflation. So this Inflation Reduction Act is going to wind up adding to inflation that we're trying to battle so badly right now with federal interest rate increases. So why are we passing it now? Well, there's some things that the Dems put in this particular bill that I think are very problematic. Now, I can go into a lot of details about the taxes and some of the challenges and some of the government spending. There's a particular carve out for private equity. Private equity is not going to be subject to the new tax implications for things like corporations, which have a 50% minimum tax for all corporations that make over $1 billion. Now, that might not sound like it impacts a lot of people, but it certainly does. And it's questionable why private equity was just unilaterally carved out in the 11th hour in a revision to this bill in essentially the last minute. But more important than all that, the thing that's going to impact your life and my life is the fact that they're funding $80 billion to the IRS. $80 billion. The annual budget for the IRS right now, $13.7 billion. So they're giving them a lot of money. Over 5x what they actually make in a single year, and $45 billion of that $80 billion allocation is going to enforcement, audits, enforcing tax penalties on you, on me, on all the consumer. And the IRS has somewhat positioned this as they can generate $200 billion in income if they get $80 billion to staff up accordingly. Is that the way we want our money spent? Do we really want to add to inflation so we can tax the consumer who's already getting hit by inflation, who's already getting hit by an unemployment rate, which is ultimately going to go up? Which brings me kind of to a segue point that we need to think about. Unemployment right now is at 3.5%. It ticked down from 3.6%, and everybody is saying, oh my gosh, this is a wonderful thing. Well, guess what? This is also going to make the Fed more hawkish when it comes to things like the next interest rate increase in September during the next Fed meeting. If that Fed meeting happens, it was largely believed prior to the new unemployment number that the federal interest rate increase would be 50 basis points followed by 2 subsequent 25 basis point increases. Now, because unemployment has not risen and they believe the job market is so strong, which I know is a lagging indicator and we all believe is a lagging indicator, they're saying that 75 basis points is again likely to be the target now based on the data that they have. So now you're going to have 3 75 basis point increases. You're going to have an economy that's very, very stressed. And now we're talking about adding to inflation via the Inflation Reduction Act, which actually does not serve to reduce inflation at all. I think we got played for fools. The whole rhetoric of being in a recessionary economy or not has been spun against us to weaponize our belief and support in something like this ahead of the midterm elections. It doesn't give the Democrats what they necessarily wanted in its entirety, but it certainly gives them a big win going into the midterms and ultimately the 2024 November elections. So be cognizant of the things that are happening. Be aware of how these things might have a fun label. They might have something that's really sensational and cool, but the real agenda hidden in these bills is not necessarily what the bill is titled and labeled to do. That's a sales pitch because they know most of us aren't going to get into those details and know what's really going to happen. That's it for this week. Know what you're doing. Know what you're voting on. You might not like it.